But I'm going to preach this morning about a topic of worship. Here's the title: False, Fast, and Pure Religion. Now, if you think someone is very religious, somebody said, well, now he's very religious. What do you think? Well, I would tend to think of their character, that they live their religion is what I think in their life. But that's not the way everyone is very religious. You know, the Pharisees in the days of Christ were very religious, but they weren't living lives like the Lord wanted them to. Their religion was a false religion. Isaiah's going to get into that here about false fast in just a minute. But you take someone, they say, oh yeah, he's very religious. What does that mean? I've heard it said about these folks, and I say this complimentary because these are usually pretty good people. They'll say, well, now they're there every time the door's open. You've heard that? I mean, every time the door's open. It's not just the 3 meetings a week. If there's gospel meetings, if there's special meetings, they're going to be there. And usually I find the people that are like that, they're very good people. But it's possible to be there every time the door's open and to be very religious outwardly, but not being the kind of person that God wants you to be. Jesus talked about that in the Sermon on the Mount. Remember those who were giving alms? What was their problem? Well, they were sounding a trumpet, and they weren't giving alms out of gratitude to God or to care of the poor. It was worth it to them because they got the attention. They wanted people to see them giving alms, and that was their reward. They got seen. What about those that pray? Well, for pretense, they make long prayers. For pretense, it was a show prayer. Now, they may have had some very eloquent prayers and knew how to word everything very well, but they weren't really leading people in prayer. They were trying to be seen praying on the street corners and all, so they would appear to be religious. And they were doing that with fasting. Here's what Jesus said in Matthew 6. Moreover, when ye fast, be not as the hypocrites of a sad countenance. They disfigure their faces that they may appear unto men to fast. Verily I say unto you, they got their reward. You know what their reward is for all that fasting? That they got seen. That was their reward. What a reward they lost for such a shallow award that they received. It says, when thou fast, anoint thy head, wash thy face, that thou appear not unto men to fast, but unto thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. Do you ever fast? Have you ever fasted? There'll probably be some things happen in your life where you just think, you know, I don't even want to eat. I'm going to spend some time in prayer, in devotion. Maybe I've got to get off to myself, or I've just got to concentrate on this, and I don't even want to eat. There have been a couple of times in my life where it's been something that I just didn't want to eat. I wanted to pray and thought, I'll just go for a few days without eating and focus on this prayer. Now that may come up in your life, but I knew what the Lord said. I don't think people knew I was fasting. You don't fast to be seen of men. There's a spiritual exercise to fasting that we'll talk about at another time, but it's not to be seen. Now, 1 Timothy chapter 3, he talks about then that men shall be lovers of them own selves. Do you think someone can be very religious just because they love themselves? They like to think that about themselves. And then it talks about how awful these people are here in 1 Timothy 3. But look down in verse 5. They have a form of godliness. They're going through the motions. They've got a ritual. They've got a religious habit. that they do. And they just love themselves for doing that. But they don't have the power thereof. It's not transforming them into the person that God wants them to be. Matthew chapter 15, Jesus came to the scribes and Pharisees, which were Jerusalem, saying, or they came to Jesus, and they say, why do thy disciples transgress the tradition of their fathers? They wash not their hands when they eat bread. Washing the hands. Now God told the priests, when you go into the temple, after making the sacrifices, go to the laver, wash your hands, and go in there with clean hands. And the scribes and Pharisees thought, whoa, that looks real holy. I'm going to wash my hands before I eat. Now, they weren't washing their hands so they would be clean. It was a ceremony they would go through. And as I understand it, it'd be quite elaborate. They'd do their hands, and then they'd walk, make sure everybody see how clean my hands are. Look how holy I am. I wash my hands before I eat. And they'd wash tables and all kind of things just to appear to be holy. And here's what Jesus said about this practice that they came up with, so they might appear holy. Their religion, ye hypocrites. Well, does Isaiah prophesy of you, saying, this people draw nigh to me with their mouth. They honor me with their lips, but their heart's far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching for doctrine the commandments of men. God didn't tell them to wash their hands this way. They came up with this, and they thought that would make them appear holy. That worship was vain. And so we come to Isaiah 29 in verse 13. Well did Isaiah. That Isaiah in the New Testament is Isaiah in the Old Testament. And here's what Jesus said, and look what he said about it. Their fear toward me is taught by the precepts of men, their traditions. How do we worship? What's worship about? Do we come up with something that we think will be very impressive and do that and say, this is going to be our worship toward God? Look what we came up with. The precepts of men, and not humbly doing the things of God. There was a problem in Isaiah's day. Isaiah chapter 1. What purpose is the multitude of your sacrifices unto me? Here they're sacrificing, but God didn't like their sacrifice. Saith the Lord, I'm full of the burnt offerings of lamb. You ever heard somebody say, I'm just full of it? I've had enough of this. I've had enough of your offerings, the fat of fed beast. I delight not in the blood of bullocks or lambs or goats. When you come up here before me, who's required this at your hand to tread my courts? It's almost like, how dare you come in here doing this? What's the problem? It says, bring no more vain oblations. That's their worship. Their worship is vain. Just quit doing it. Don't do that. Incense is an abomination unto me. It's supposed to come to God as a sweet-smelling favor. But your incense stinks. It says, the new moons and the Sabbath, the calling of the assemblies, I cannot away with. I can't hardly put up with this. It says, it is iniquity, even the solemn meeting, your new moons, your appointed feast. My soul hateth their trouble unto me. I'm weary to bear them. And when you spread forth your hands, now watch this. You spread forth your hands, I'll hide my eyes from you. Yea, when ye make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. Don't come to me with hands full of blood after you've been treating other people the way you have, and then say, I'm going to come worship you, Lord. Your hands are full of blood. And so wash, make you clean, put away the evil of your doings from before my eyes and cease to do evil. That's what the Lord wants us to do. We have to live right to worship right. When I thought about spread my hands and the prayers and your hands are full of blood, I thought about Paul may have been reading that when he wrote 1 Timothy 2 and verse 8. I will therefore that men pray everywhere. See, we're talking about prayers. What kind of hands? Lifting up holy hands. That word holy is not the word that means set apart. It means undefiled. Lifting up holy hands. Compare that with what Isaiah is talking about. You spread your hand before me and they're full of blood. You're going to come worship me and pray to me. Your hands need to be undefiled. Holy hands. It shows that right worship has to be in keeping with right living. And you don't just do the motions of worship and live any way you want to and accept that to be acceptable to God. So let's go to Isaiah 58. As we're working through the preaching of Isaiah, we've come to this chapter. And he says, cry aloud, lift up thy voice like a trumpet. Well, you know how a trumpet gets your attention. Show my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sins. That's the command from the prophet. What's their problem? Well, they seek me daily. They delight to know my ways as a nation that did righteousness. Now, they're not doing righteousness, but they're just like a nation that does righteousness. They act like they're trying to. It says, they forsake not the ordinance of their God. They ask of me the ordinance of justice. They take delight in approaching God. And then they're disappointed in the result. God's not paying attention to our worship. He says, wherefore have we fasted, they say, and thou seest not. God, don't you see how much we fasted? Why are we still having this trouble? Why are we still suffering in this captivity? Why are we having these problems? Haven't we been worshiping you? He says, we've afflicted our soul, and thou takest no knowledge. You're not paying attention to our wonderful worship that we're giving you. Here's the trouble. In the day of your fast, you find pleasure. Oh, they were fasting. They were doing it for themselves, for their own pleasure. And I think I put it in the bulletin this way. They're doing without physical food, but their souls were feeding on their own self-righteousness. It says, and ye exact all your labors. Behold, ye fast for strife and debate. Look how you're living. You're living lives of strife and debate. Here's what they're doing. Smite with the fist of wickedness. Ye shall not fast as you do this day. Make your voice to be heard on high. Is such a fast that I have chosen? A day for a man to afflict his soul, to bow down his head as a bulrush, to spread his sackcloth and ashes under him. Will you call this a fast and an acceptable day to the Lord? I didn't choose this fast. Now, God did choose a fast on the Day of Atonement. See how it says they were to afflict his soul? What's that word? But now these are fasts that they were doing on their own. This wasn't something God told them to do. They were doing this. This shall be a statute forever. Here's the Day of Atonement, Leviticus 16. It says, on the 10th day of the month, ye shall afflict your souls. See, that's the language Isaiah is using from Leviticus, the Day of Atonement fast. The priest shall make an atonement. Again in verse 31, ye shall afflict your souls. But your fasting, this is something you came up with. This wasn't the fast that I desired of you. Is not this the fast that I have chosen? Okay, what is the fast that God chooses? And it's not going to be talking about now denying yourself things, but self-denial. Denying yourself. Denying yourself that you might be of service and of value to others. This is the fast I want. A fast of self-denial. Now, I could read that, but I was kind of reformed it so you can kind of see this. Maybe as preacher points here. This is that text. The fast that I have chosen. Here's what I choose. Loose the bands of wickedness. Undo the heavy burdens. Let the oppressed go free. Break every yoke. Deal thy bread to the hungry. Bring the poor that are cast out into thy house. Cover him that is naked. Hide not thyself from thine own flesh. I thought about the parable of the Good Samaritan. Fellow laying by the road, and what they do, they went by on the other side. And just kind of hide yourself so you don't see the problems they're dealing with and don't have to fool with that. Listen, the fast that I choose, the fast I want to see out of you is quit living for yourself and think about others that need your help and be of service to them. I read down that list. I was reminded of this list. Matthew 25, 42 through 43. I was hungry. You gave me no meat. I was thirsty. You gave me no drink. I was a stranger. You took me not in. Naked and you clothed me not. Sick and in prison and you visited me not. That's when the Lord appears to separate the sheep from the goats. And look, you didn't help me when I needed help. The fast I want is one you'll sacrifice yourself for others. And that's when the blessings come. Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thy health shall spring forth speedily, and thy righteousness shall go before me, and the glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. Then shalt thou call, and the Lord will answer. See how they're saying, hey, we fasted, and the Lord's not paying attention to how we done all this, and he's not listening. Well, they weren't living right. That was the problem. But now you start living right. You start caring for other people. Then when you call, I'll answer. Thou shalt cry, and he shall say, here I am. That's what the Lord will do. The Lord will say, I'm here for you. He says, if thou take away from the midst of thee the yoke, the putting forth of the finger and speaking vanity, putting forth the finger. See, you're the accuser. You're putting forth the finger. Look at you. I think of that Pharisee. I'm glad I'm not like that publican. See, putting forth the finger. And if thou draw out thy soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall thy light rise in obscurity, and thy darkness be as the noonday. And the Lord shall guide thee continually, and satisfy thy soul in drought, and make fat thy bones. And then I like this one. Thou shalt be like a watered garden. You know, we're blessed with the rains here. Usually every now and then we'll have a time when we go without rains, and you can tell the folks that water their garden, can't you? It's beautiful in a time of drought because they watered it. And God says, you'll be like a watered garden, like a spring of water whose waters failed up. And they that shall be of thee shall build the old waste places. They're in Babylon in captivity, but they that shall be of thee, your children, I'm going to bring them home. They'll be able to come back to the promised land. They'll rebuild. It says, they shall raise up the foundation of many generations, and thou shalt be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of the paths to dwell in. If thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy days, and call the Sabbath a delight, a holy of the Lord, honorable, and shall honor him, not doing thy own ways, nor finding thy own pleasure, nor speaking thy own words. See, their religion was all about themselves. If you make it about me again, He says, then thou shalt delight thyself in the Lord. I'll cause thee to ride on the high places of the earth and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father. The mouth of the Lord has spoken it. There's a right way to worship. And we need to do the right thing. But for it to be acceptable to God, that worship is to be accompanied by the right life. Micah chapter 6. Micah was a prophet contemporary with Isaiah. Isaiah preaching in Jerusalem. Micah out here in the little towns and villages around about. Micah says, wherewith shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before the high God? Same problem here. Listen, shall I come before him with burnt offerings and calves of a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams or 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? That's what the pagans would do. They'd sacrifice their own children. Is that what you want, Lord? He's shown the old man what is good and what doth the Lord require. Here it is. Do justly. Love mercy. Walk humbly with thy God. That is how we make our worship a sweet-smelling savor to him. Let's go back to Matthew 25. I was hungry and you gave me meat. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. Naked and you clothed me. Sick and you visited me. In prison and you came unto me. And then he says this down in verse 40. Verily I say unto you, verily means listen, truly, truly now. I'm telling you, this is the truth. Verily I say unto you, inasmuch as you've done it unto one of the least of these my brethren, you've done it unto me. Jesus came and dwelt in the flesh among us, and he suffered with us. He knew what it was like to be hungry and thirsty. And he knew what it was like when people offered their hand of care toward him. And so he looks at us as his brethren. I mean, this is the brotherhood of man we're talking about here. And when we see others, like that fellow that was waylaid on the Jerusalem to Jericho road, well, when you done it to the least of me, that's how you do it unto me. And then I thought of James 1:27. And I want to analyze this a little for you. Pure religion. See how the yellow pure religion links to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction. Undefiled, what's that talking about? Keeping yourself unspotted from the world. Let me put it this way. I'm just going to rearrange it just so you can see the significance now of how James is expressing this. Pure religion. You want to be a very religious? Then visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction. Undefiled, that's keeping yourself unspotted from the world. Pure religion. Undefiled religion. This practice of religion that includes our worship. If that's going to be something that is pleasing to God, it's done by a life pleasing to God. And so remember it this way. It's good to be religious, but being religious is not a substitute for being righteous. And so they need to go together. I'm proud when we come together, and I enjoy our worship together. And I know I'm with some of the finest people on earth when I do this. But it's time to examine our hearts, isn't it? We want our life to be such that our worship is pleasing. If you might need to cleanse your hands, be baptized into Christ, or seek the forgiveness of Him if you're a child of God through prayer. And if you need to do it, we offer an opportunity to do that now as we stand and sing the invitation song.